What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do a quick corner balance and alignment on my GT350 right here. So below I'll put the relevant videos of my what we're calling our Magride coilover conversion kits, allowing you to use a 2.5-inch coilover spring but retain the stock Magride shocks and struts. Currently the car is sitting on 400-pound springs in the front, 1100 in the rear, and since all that is new, this is my first time out with it, I got to do a corner balance, and then obviously since everything was apart, got to do an alignment while we're there. As you can see, we're just going to jump right into doing the corner balance. Now obviously you need scales. This is kind of a little bit beyond I would think like the average person, but if you have scales you probably already know how to do a corner balance. So the main thing is I'll kind of show you how our coilover conversion kits work to get you that corner balance. Then from there we'll throw our toe strings on it. So we're already set up. Everything's reading 0, so we'll get our first reading. All right, so we're down on the scales and our initial reading is right here. The cool thing is the total weight is down to 3623. I went back and checked my old pictures, and the last time this thing was on scales was 3775, so it's a little over 150 pounds lighter. Most of that, the biggest single chunk is no passenger seat. Driver seat saved some weight, trunk saved some weight. We removed the e-brake and installed our e-brake spacers. Let's see, there may have been a few other like odds and ends. Rear fender liners are out, so. But the one question mark is fuel load. Right now, unfortunately, I'm a little bit light. I'm at like a quarter tank. I don't know what was in it before, but anyways, the first thing I'm going to do is check my splitter height. Now this is a little bit different than some people might do it, but I know exactly what I want my splitter to be. That shouldn't really change too much. It should be at 3 inches, and the scales are 2 3/8. So if we're at 5 3/8, you can see we're at like 5 1/4, I guess. The funny thing is, if I give this car a little bit of a bounce, what I'm going to do is lift up on it and slowly let it down, and we'll re-measure, and we're at 5 1/2 now. So there's almost like a 1/4 inch of like stickiness in, I don't know, the shocks or the suspension. Almost any car kind of does it. Depending on how you bounce it, it could settle one way or the other. So I'm kind of right where I want to be. I could always, I think I'm just going to leave the front as is. Might do a 1/16 on one corner or the other. So bouncing it around doesn't look like much has changed. I'm going to hop in the car real quick. And with me in the car, I don't know if you can see that all the way out here. We definitely need a tiny bit on the left front, and we will add some to the right rear. All right, so first thing we're going to do is just a little 1/16 of an inch because the front wasn't too far off. So I left the hardware loose, as you can see, because I knew we were going to be coming in with shims. And you can see how this one has a little notch on it, and this one has a little point on it. The point, we're on the driver's side, so the point goes, I always forget, towards the point and the notch always go into the rear, so they're going to end up going in like this on the back one. You can see how the hole is further here and shorter here, so that's how you can tell which one is which. All right, so we're in. We basically raised this spring perch a 1/16 of an inch, so we'll take a measurement. All right, so it's a little hard to see, but it changed a little bit, not much. Let's see, the next furthest off corner The right rear is extra light, and when we come up with that one, the front left will pick up weight as well. So I think what we'll do is I'll show you how to adjust the rear perches. All right, guys, so here we are under the right rear of the car. And this piece right here is what we're going to want to turn. We're going to want to turn it to the right to raise the spring perch. A little dark in here. Our lower spring perch is right there. There is a grub screw that will lock this bolt when we're all done. Can't see it at the moment. Now I do have a jack under the side of the car, taking some weight off of it. I'm gonna do about a turn, I guess. So we just raised this spring perch about a 1/16 of an inch, a little over a 1/16. We'll see what that does. All right, so sitting back in the car. Wow, the front is almost perfect. The right rear picked up some weight. Took a little off the left rear, right front. So at this point, I got a decision to make. What do I want to prioritize? I could get a perfect 50-50, but that would put a lot more weight on the front left. As you can tell, the physical weight of the car is the issue at the moment. I think the big one is 50-pound passenger seat is gone, which would put some weight on, a little on the right front, primarily on the right rear. But this is like a prime example of, let's say something like the battery, which most of the weight is on the front right at the moment. What's a battery, 30 pounds or so? If I were to relocate it to the right rear, that would be a pretty good, you know, weight, physical weight distribution rather than just, you know, spring perch weight. So what do I want to do? Let me think about it for a second. All right, so I lowered the left rear perch a tiny bit, so you can see we're right at like almost 900 even right now. Starting to get a little heavy on the left front, and with VIR being mostly right-hand turns, I don't think I want to go any further. All right, guys, so that's where we're going to call it on the corner balance. Here's the numbers without me in the car, because I know some people are going to be curious. Me sitting in it actually brings this down almost a full percentage point. So one thing I'm going to do after looking at all of this, battery relocation. Because let's say if I pulled 30 pounds out of the front right and put it on the right rear, this would be about 1,000. It would come down close to this. This would be 790 to 843. So you can see how just moving physical weight would get me much closer. And then fine tuning a corner balance would be nice as well. But anyways, that's kind of down the road. This just kind of showed you how you can corner balance your car with our coilover conversion kit. So definitely, you know, nice to be able to fine tune stuff. Oh, one thing, very important note, I didn't quite show it. The sway bar end links, I made myself a set of adjustable end links, and I can reach around like under the tires and turn them to where you can feel when there's like zero preload on the adjustable sway bar end link. So they're loose, and right now, like, you know, it's not preload in any corner or anything, so that's something you got to remember as well. Just make sure your sway bar end links aren't kind of, you know, doing anything funny on you. So that's it for the corner balance. At this point, we're going to get the scales out and set up our toe strings. And then one last thing to note, you notice we only put a 1/16 shim in the front left of our car. If we're at the track and splitter scraping is an issue, just like we put that 1/16 shim in, we could shim both sides evenly to raise the splitter off the ground. You know, so that's another benefit as well. I don't think I'll need to. I actually went up in the rear about 1/4 of an inch to give the car just a little bit of rake. Wind tunnel data showed that's much better. Well, we'll see how it is on track. All right, so you can see we got the toe strings on the car. We didn't square them yet, because first thing we're gonna do is actually take our camber caster on these cars. I got the Vorschlag plates. I just put it in the back hole. There's really no like fine adjustment, if you will. So it kind of is what it is. When you do your own alignments, just remember caster, camber, toe in that order. Adjusting camber, for example, will change the toe. So you don't want to set your toe and then change the camber, because then your toe's going to be off. But changing toe won't change the camber. I hope that makes sense. Caster, camber, toe, just remember that. All right, guys, one thing I wanted to add to this video is I do have one of these caster camber gauges from Longacre. Got this thing years ago, but let's make sure the magnet is clean. If we put it squarely on the hub of the rim, now obviously it's aluminum, so it's not staying itself. I gotta hold it. Let's see, get that bubble centered. You can see we're at just past 2.5 bubble in the negative. So, you know, our string method said we were at 2.6 or 2.7. So, you know, we're pretty good right there. Now caster, I was just setting up to do that just to check to see where we're at. So you can see the bubble is at 0 with the wheel square. We got to turn it 20 degrees one way and then 20 degrees the other. And then what this bubble says is the difference. So a little trick I use, since I don't have turn plates or anything, this is just a cheap plastic trash bag, which obviously the car is off right now. But you can see how much easier it allows me to turn, because right now we need to go to the left 20 degrees. All right, so right about there is pretty close. We want to make sure this bubble here is level. Turn this little knob till caster reads 0. So we're at 0 with it turned. Now we got to turn it to the right 20 degrees. And now when we put it on, let's see, we're level right about there. And you can see, we'll call that 7.5, which is right about, I think, what I was expecting. All right, so what we're gonna do is just hang a string in front of the tire like this. So it looks like it's pretty much stopped moving. We'll call that 32 millimeters. Then at the top, we'll say, top's a little easier to see, 55. So 55 to 32. All right, so I just use a trig calculator on my phone. It's just an app you can download, easy enough. The rim would be this one right here, because that's actually what's on a bit of an angle, and we effectively have a right angle from there, and the string was coming down. I hope that makes sense. So this is the one on an angle. Now, it's a 19-inch rim, but since I was measuring from outside lip to outside lip, it's actually about 20 inches. So we're gonna switch to millimeters, because we measured in millimeters, and that is actually 502 millimeters. And then we need at least one measurement, and it was 32 to 55. So what's that, 23 millimeters? And then calculate. So we're at 2.6 degrees of camber already. Honestly, that 2.6, I don't think is too bad. So that 2.6, I'm happy with it. I kind of knew I would be right around there, because the Vorschlag plates, I don't know if you can see it with the light, there's like a little pointer in there. Plus you could tell where the strut bolt is with contacting here. It's like I can't get much more anyways. So funny enough, I'm actually not going to touch this corner. I'm going to have to do the same around all the corners. The rear, since that's all part of the subframe and I never touched it, I'm assuming the rear will be okay. Toe may have changed because I did the solid bushings, but we'll get to toe in a second. Also, one thing to note is with this app, you can actually work stuff backwards. So we know that the wheel is 502 millimeters, and say you want 2.5 degrees of camber, you could just adjust your wheel till you get almost 22 millimeters difference between top and bottom. That's a lot quicker way doing it rather than adjust it and do the math every time. So, you know, that'll kind of speed things up. Just get to that 22-ish millimeters, and you know you're good. All right, so I just got done doing the camber on the rear. They're both almost exactly 2 degrees. If I remember right, I think they're just kind of slammed all the way in on the camber arms. One was like 2.05, so not quite 2.1 degrees. So but that's about all I can get out of the rear. Again, front's around 2.6, 2.7 degrees. So now that camber's done, we finally get to start working on toe. Now, funny enough, as much as this car has been apart and put back together, the fact that I haven't had to actually adjust anything yet is actually pretty cool. This almost never happens, but I'm not going to complain. Makes the alignment a little bit easier. So now we got to square up the toe strings. Now the toe strings, as you can see, I moved this one just because it was kind of hitting the string when I was doing camber. We are using 6 on front and rear. So you can see we got like a little bit of space between the tire, and the weight hanging on it is just enough to kind of keep it like tight the whole way. And you can see we're on 6 on this one and 6 in the back. That's really important, so we know that we have a perfect square. Well, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. Right now, if you think about it, this bar could be like this way. So then we would actually have a little bit of like a quadrilateral, I think. Anyways, yeah, just kind of picture it like that. So now we got to square up the strings to the car. So now what we're going to do, you got to pick the center of the wheel. And I should probably get a different ruler with like bigger letters. We're at 97 millimeters off of right there. And if we walk around to this side, we are at 90, and call it about 100. So I'm actually really close right off the bat. So basically 98.5 will square up the front. So we just got to shove this that way, literally 1.5 millimeters. Yeah, we're actually might be hard to say perfectly, like 98.5. Come back around to this side and use the same point, and I'll call that 98.5. So we got to do the same thing to the rear, but when we do the rear, if that moves a little bit, it will move the front. So you got to go side to side and kind of front and back a couple of times just to make sure you're perfectly square. All right, so I had to adjust the rear a little bit. So the rear square, that made the front like 1 millimeter off, so front's re-square. So now we're good. So now we can measure toe. Toe, pretty simply put, toe in would be if the wheel was, you know, toed in. Toe out is that way. I'm going to go for 0 toe. I'm a little bit used to the old chassis, which liked a little bit of toe out. I think on these newer cars, the factory spec is actually 0.1 toe in on the front. Now that is also, you know, rubber bushings and all that stuff. I'm going to go 0 toe. I can always tweak it from there. I'm sure everybody has their opinion on what they like. I got to figure out for myself. So measurements for toe are pretty simple. We will just, whoops, backwards. Let's see, we are at, we'll call that 40 millimeters. If we go to the front, we are at, oh, you gotta be kidding me. We are at 40. Wow. So this wheel, I think in the previous clip I mentioned this alignment. The video was originally meant to kind of show you how to do an alignment. I guess it's a little bit more of how to measure your alignment. If you're doing your own alignment, you probably know how to make the adjustments necessary for caster, camber, toe, all that stuff. So let's see driver's side. And we are at 40 again. Oh, tell me this is going to be 40. Holy crap, that never happens. String's like right on 40. All the years I've been aligning my cars, I don't think that's ever happened. Especially since I did new bushings and all the stuff that I did on the front of this thing. Interesting. not complaining. So anyways, that's how you measure toe. If you want toe in or out, you know, you would just change your measurements based on that. Let's check rear really quick. Now the rear, generally on these cars, people will say a little bit of toe in. So if we're at 30, a little bit of toe in might be like 31, 32. We're at 31. So actually, about 1 millimeter toe in. Let's see, 1 millimeter toe in. Where's my phone? We know the wheel is 502. It was only about 1 millimeter. Oh wow, okay. So 0.11 in. It's kind of hard to get like half millimeters. We'll say 1.5. 502. 1.7 toe in. Okay. That's in the ballpark. I think the factory spec, I was actually looking them up. The GT350R is 0.3 toe in. But again, that's still all rubber bushings and everything. I got rid of a lot of the rubber. So I'm right in the ballpark of where I want to be. Let's check the other side real quick. 29 and a half. It's closer to the 30 mark. This is 31. 30, oh, 29. So I finally have to make an adjustment. I gotta go in about, I guess, 2 millimeters. Because with this measurement being about a 1 millimeter shorter than the back, that means the tire is actually towed out a tiny bit. So I'll make a quick adjustment. Depending on if you have factory or aftermarket toe links, you know, just make your adjustment to bring it where it needs to be. But that's really about it. All right, so we're gonna adjust that toe real quick. What's cool about toe strings is I know we're on the 6 and there's a little notch right there. So I could pull this string off, get it out of our way, because obviously you can tell I'm doing this on the floor. I can't really get underneath of it. Pull the wheel off. So now I can get in here, make my adjustment. I'm gonna try and do something a little fancy on this one. I'm gonna grab my dial indicator with the magnetic base, because if I can make one adjustment and get this dead on, it'll save me from having to go like up and down a couple times. Because I still have the factory, adjustment, which aren't known for being the easiest, greatest accuracy. All right, guys, so as you can see, I got my dial indicator set up on the front of the rotor. I got 2 nuts on it, just holding it, you know, tight. And that rotor is a 15-inch rotor. Now that's important because I did a little math, just so we can kind of zip through this for video purposes. So we know that the wheel is 502 millimeters, and it was about 2.5, or I'm sorry, we need to move it about 2.5 millimeters across the whole distance, because we're about 1 toed out. We want to be about 1.5 or so in, so that's where that comes from. The rotor, where I have the dial indicator, is 15 inches, so that's 380 millimeters. So we want to find X. With that 502 and that 2.5, we get 0.28 degrees. You know, the recommended setting is 0.3, so, you know, we know we're pretty close there. So then we could just use that 0.28 and that 380 to find X. X, we need to move 1.8 millimeters, or since the dial indicator is in inches, we need to go about 70 thousandths of an inch in. Hope that all kind of makes sense. So that way, that little bit of math, I could just make that one adjustment, put it all back together. I will double check, but we should be like right there. All right, guys, so we're all set up. The hub will pivot off of that bushing right there, and the toe link is down there. So there's gonna be a slightly different, I guess, leverage, maybe not leverage ratio. There's gonna be a slightly different ratio between the pivots than all the way out here. So I might wanna undershoot the 70 thou a little bit, but we're all loose. So we're all loose on our eccentric back there. So I'm gonna go underneath and turn it. And, oops, which way do I wanna go? That way. And as I turn it, you can see the dial indicator start moving. think I'll shoot for like 65. Okay. So there we go. I know I moved exactly 65 thou at this point. So let's tighten it up and double check at the actual wheel. All right, so the cool thing about toe strings, now that we're back on, I already rolled the car forward and backwards a couple feet to settle the suspension. I double checked myself and I did go back and make another adjustment. It ended up being towed in a tiny bit too much, so I ended up pulling a little bit out. And if you look, we are now at 29 and this one is 30. So that 1 millimeter is about 0.15 toe in. I believe the recommended setting is 0.3 total. So you only want about a millimeter toe in each side. So remember that. Hopefully learn something there. But yeah, so I made that adjustment and alignment is done. All right, guys, so there you go. I know this was kind of a quick one. It turned out to be a little bit more of just how to like measure your stuff. Like I mentioned earlier, you should know how to make the adjustment to get the settings that you want. So I'm going to be out on track with this next weekend. Should be fun, whole bunch of changes and everything. Obviously I'll do a track day video. That one should be fun because Saturday I'll be out in this car, and then Sunday I'm taking the race car out. So 2 cars in 1 weekend. If you want to see that video and just keep up to date with everything we're doing, please hit that subscribe button. As always, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one.